Say hello to the all-new Alexa Plus and see how Alexa can do so much more for you. Need tickets to see your favorite artist? Craving your comfort restaurant? Just sit back, relax, and talk naturally. Alexa's on it. It learns your style, anticipates what's next, and makes it happen across Echo, Fire TV, and more. Learn more at amazon.com/new Alexa.
This episode is brought to you by Netflix. Jay Kelly, the new film from Academy Award nominee Noah Baumbach. George Clooney stars as an actor confronting his past and present on a journey of self-discovery, alongside Adam Sandler as his devoted manager. Critics are calling it a declaration of love to the chaotic art of filmmaking, with the Wall Street Journal praising it as a transcendent comedy drama. Watch Jay Kelly December 5th, only on Netflix.
Let the Record Show with Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, noted commentator, attorney, and essayist Eric Levine. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. We hope all of our listeners had a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday with their families and their friends. As we said last week, there's much to be grateful for in this great country. The freedom of speech, the freedom of opportunity, the freedom of association, freedom of religion, the fact that you can come here with nothing and make something yourself. A country where people from all over the world try to get in. You don't see a lot of people trying to bust out of this great country of ours. There's no class structure in this country. You can start with nothing and you can make yourself everything. And it's a remarkable thing indeed. Europe doesn't have that, and Asia doesn't have that, and Latin America doesn't have that. America has that, and we should all be blessed with that, and the freedom to think and speak the way we want. So that's the good news, that we got through Thanksgiving, and it was a good year. But then it was also a tragedy. And Eric is with me today. Jesse is off with his family. Let me tell you what the tragedy is. The tragedy is there's been this escalation of political violence all across the country, mostly coming from the left, directed at centrists or opponents, some from the right, but mostly from the left. And they've been escalating the rhetoric, and the relationship between rhetoric and violence is really a proximate cause. You had somebody who came over from Afghanistan, who now the recent reports tell us was not vetted by the CIA, even though he allegedly helped the CIA in Afghanistan. He's one of thousands of people who came here from Afghanistan after the terrible, awful abandonment of Afghanistan to the Taliban and the abandonment of our allies. And he came over here and he was given a home. And he returned the favor of becoming obviously bitter and disgruntled, perhaps indoctrinated. Perhaps he's always a subversive who just came over here. We don't know the answer yet. That's still an investigation. But we do know that one woman lies dead, a National Guard woman, a beautiful young woman. Another National Guardsman is lying critically wounded, and we don't know what's going to happen with that. And I find it's just so awful and so sad. And it's emboldened and encouraged by the far left radicals, whether it's the demonstrators or paid demonstrators that come from the sources of the money, some domestic, some foreign. But this is a horrible situation. And they're encouraged by a lot of the Democratic officials or would-be Democratic officials, elected officials. And this is awful. The enemies are not the National Guard. The enemies are not the ICE officers. They're enforcing the law and bringing peace and domestic tranquility to our streets when the Democratic mayors and governors have abandoned that as goals. They're waging war against the United States of America and to our constitutional republic. And I am deeply saddened and troubled by this. Eric, your thoughts?
I couldn't agree with you more. My heart goes out to the family of this young woman who was gunned down in Washington. What a tragedy. The woman was nothing short of a patriot, a hero, and to be gunned down by somebody who, who's not supposed to be here, who wasn't vetted to be here, just makes it all that much worse. I mean, this is just part of the legacy, as you point out, of the catastrophic surrender in Afghanistan, part and parcel of the radical left's efforts to have an open border and to bring everyone and anyone, no matter what, into our country. No country, no borders, no country. And this is part of that legacy. I will say, though, I do want to point that if indeed America is at war and there are people in the war zone, friends, and there were many in Afghanistan that worked with the American military, the CIA, Marines, all branches of government in our war effort there. Those people do deserve to come to the United States. They do deserve our protection, particularly when we betrayed them and abandoned them so dramatically. But that doesn't mean that everyone gets it. And, I mean, everyone needs to be vetted. You get I think you get the benefit of the doubt if you cooperated and worked with the CIA or the military in fighting the Taliban. But again, it doesn't mean you get an automatic pass. There always must be some sort of vetting. But a lot of the blame is to be placed on the rhetoric. Just take, for example, these, I think it's 5 senators or 6 senators are making this point. You have the right, speaking to the military, you have a right to refuse to follow illegal orders. But when you ask them what those illegal orders were, they couldn't give a single example. I mean, that's disgraceful because it gives the implication that the military is carrying out illegal orders, that illegal orders have been given and the American military is carrying them out. That's putting aside what their view of Donald Trump is, that defames the armed forces. And that's just utterly disgraceful. And they do the same thing to ICE. These people are only doing their jobs. They do the same thing to the National Guard. These people are only doing their jobs. And they make the point, we don't want to live in a police state. People don't know what a police state is. We do not live in a police state. I find it highly ironic that everybody who's criticizing this government, Trump administration, who they take to the streets and they take to the airwaves and they take to the, social media to say all these horrible things about the U.S. government, and they're free to say it. That is not how a police state works. That's how a democracy works. That's how our country works. If they want to know what a police state is, they should read some history. Go look, for example, at East Germany and Erich Honecker, who was the president of East Germany. When people tried to get out of East Berlin, to climb the wall and go to freedom in West Berlin, they were shot. They were gunned down in the streets. They were shot on the walls. That is what a police state is. A police state is Joseph Stalin, who does not allow you to speak. And if you do speak against the government, you're either killed or you're sent to a gulag. A police state is Mao and China, that if you don't follow the Cultural Revolution, you die. And keep in mind, more people died in the Cultural Revolution under Mao than Hitler killed in the war and Stalin killed during the Soviet period. So we really need to start, dialing back the rhetoric here about the evils of people that are really just carrying out their legal authority under the law. To arrest someone who is here illegally and has committed a crime is not a police state. And to call someone, some sort of evil name or to advocate for resisting legal authority when they are carrying out legally passed laws contributes to what we're seeing. If you don't like the laws, change them. And the way you change them is to vote. You vote in people that you like. And part of the problem for the left is they can't stand when they lose. So their alternative is always basically it's extortion. Give us what we want. We will resort to violence.
That's what they did in 2020, Eric. The BLM riots, the Antifa riots of 2020 during their last election.
Right, those were okay. In fact, and those took place during COVID. And apparently, if conservatives got together in a group and didn't wear masks, that was a highly contagious event, whatever term they used. But if you were rioting and looting stores during a BLM riot, COVID couldn't be transmitted. The double standard is remarkable. It's got to be one standard for all, and it's got to be the rule of law for all. And if someone is carrying out their legal, duly delegated authority, then you got to get out of the way and let them do it. I mean, to have elected officials standing in the way of law enforcement officers is an abomination. Not how the country works. If you don't like the laws, change it. And if you lose at the ballot box, fighting and violence is not the answer. You keep trying, and if you keep failing, maybe your ideas stink. Maybe that's why you lose.
Well, that's exactly right. The fact of the matter is, if they want to talk about people who don't have legitimacy, they have no legitimacy. They were beaten at the ballot box. The Senate and the House went Republican. They've returned Trump to the White House. He is a legitimate president. He won fair and square. The policies that he's been following, many of which I agree with, some of which I disagree with, but the policies found have been lawful policies, closing the border against illegal migration. People were trying to get in here without the permission of the government of the United States, going through the processes dictated and determined by the statutes created by Congress and signed by the president to enable lawful legal migration. That's what he was doing. When the Democrats fought him every step of the way in their first term because they refused to give him the funds to build a border wall, they attacked him for building a border wall. Every country that has a border...
Now they're in favor of the border wall all of a sudden.
Well, I mean, the whole thing is preposterous. The hypocrisy is amazing. They have no sense of irony, Eric. The fact of the matter is that you can't have a country without borders. You have a lawful system to emigrate here lawfully. You get online like everybody else. If you come here as a visitor with a visitor's visa, then it's your obligation when the visa expires to leave and to move on and to reapply if you want to become a citizen or come back again with another visitor's visa. You just can't plop yourself here and say, I'm staying. There's nothing you can do about it. And the fact that Biden... I'm sorry. The fact that Biden allowed it to happen is reprehensible in the tens of millions.
Yeah, I mean, I want to be on the record. I support legal immigration. In fact, I support expanding legal immigration. The two greatest civilizations in the history of the world were Rome, United States of America. And one of the things they had in common was that they encouraged the best and the brightest from around the known world, around the globe, to come and make a life here, to be creative, add wealth, to help their fellow citizens. And we need more legal migration for the simple fact, just look at things like Social Security and Medicare. We don't have enough people here to fund it as the baby boomers retire. So we need more people. People need to come legally. But to another point, this reads into why the left is so adamant about expanding the Supreme Court. Because from their perspective, the Supreme Court is not just someone who calls balls and strikes. From their perspective, the court system, and the Supreme Court in particular, is here to be a super legislator. If we lose at the ballot box, if we lose in the state houses, if we lose in the Congress, then we need the Supreme Court to rewrite laws and to give us what we want. And because we have a Supreme Court that is calling balls and strikes, being called all kinds of names. They're being, this is the most conservative court in our lifetime. It's ultra-conservative. These are right-wing reactionaries. And then again, what does that kind of rhetoric get us? It gets us someone who wanted to kill Supreme Court Justice Kavanaugh. Right?
And it's just dumb that they caught this guy, by the way.
Right. But this is why they want to pack the courts, because they don't like that their ideas aren't embraced. So it comes back to winning at the ballot box, not violence, not packing the court. And what we have seen in the streets of Washington, D.C., when this poor, beautiful young woman was shot down, carrying out her patriotic duty, is an utter disgrace.
And so it's just heartbreaking. It's just heartbreaking that we come to this. And what troubles me, Eric, enormously, is this is not the end of the violence. this is not the middle of violence. I believe this is the beginning of violence, because nothing seems to chill their passion for attack and dehumanizing their political opponents. You have this character, this woman from Texas, who keeps ranting and raving. What's her name? Crockett? And every time she's on, her rhetoric becomes more inflammatory. And, they make Trump the devil incarnate. And anyone who supports Trump's policy is a devil incarnate. And when you point out to these people that the dangers with illegal migration, with cartels, with fentanyl, with mentally ill, with a professional criminal class, with unvetted people coming in here, and you point this out, you're somehow anti-immigrant. You're not anti-immigrant. You're for a common sense policy that protects the citizens and the residents of this country. The first obligation of government is to protect the citizenry. That is essential. Without, I've said it before, I'll say it again, without protection of the public and the public safety mandate being fulfilled, then there's no moral legitimacy to govern. And what I'm afraid is we're going into these hostile tribes. The country is divided. I mean, if you can't agree that violence is a bad thing and it should not be the way of dealing with political disputes, if you cannot agree that borders should be closed so you have control of your own future of the country, if you don't believe that there are legitimate laws that have to be enforced, if you don't believe that there are certain traditions and customs and rules, like the 9 members of the court or the filibuster, that should be continued because of the legitimacy and they work for a reason. If you don't believe that the constitutional republic of checks and balances and no amalgamation of power to the hands of one person or group is important, then we haven't done our job of educating the people that are here. And the fact of the matter is, how do you educate people who are not rightfully here into the traditions and the customs, the mores, the laws, the culture of this country? What you have is you have a whole bunch of people who not only have no agenda to assimilate, have no desire to assimilate, but have a hostility to assimilation. And that's a big problem. You have to have people who want to be Americans. It has nothing to do with your religion or the color of your skin or the ethnic background. It has to do with the idea that when you come here, you want to be an American, get the benefits of America, and contribute to the American dream for all people. What say you?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. But I think we've run out of time in this segment. So, Richard, why don't you segue us into the next one?
Well, we're going to take a break now. This is Let the Record Show. Chairman Garcia is off on vacation this week. Eric Levine, our good friend and co-host, noted attorney, commentator, and essayist, is with me. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Please stay with us. We'll be back in about a few moments with more important and interesting conversation on this week's Let the Record Show.
Let the Record Show with Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia on the Red Apple Podcast Network. If you're looking to create, grow, and sustain your wealth, download and subscribe to the Pain Points of Wealth podcast at BeBullish.com with Bob, Ryan, and Chris Payne. It's your podcast for market insights, money tips, and real talk on the economy. Download and subscribe at BeBullish.com.
This episode is brought to you by Blink. Blink Friday starts now with up to 65% off Blink Smart Security. Check on your pets all season long with new Blink Mini 2K Plus cameras. See your gifts arrive in head-to-toe view with Blink Video Doorbell. Ready to use right out of the box. Just unwrap Blink and go. From pet parents to jet setters to busy families, Blink Friday deals have your holidays covered. Shop now at Amazon.com/Blink.
Hey guys, it's Candace Owens. Over the last few years, you know that I have been prioritizing cutting the junk from my diets because there's just so much ultra-processed snacks, seed oils, mystery chemicals. No, it's just not good. That's why I like Paleo Valley's approach, traditional fermentation to keep their meat sticks fresh with no weird preservatives and ingredients that you can actually pronounce. You get up to 20% off by going to paleovalley.com, and you can make clean snacks the default for your family. That's paleovalley.com for 20% off.
Hi, I'm here to pick up my son Milo. There's no Milo here.
Who picked up my son from school?
Streaming only on Peacock.
I'm gonna need the name of everyone that could have a connection.
You don't understand. It was just the 5 of us.
So this was all planned.
What are you gonna do? I will do whatever it takes to get my son back.
I honestly didn't see this coming. These nice people killing each other.
All Her Fault. A new series streaming now only on Peacock. Let the Record Show with Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to Let the Record Show. Chairman Jesse Garcia, the Republican Party, is off this week. Eric Levine, a wonderful co-host, known attorney, commentator, and essayist, is with me today. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. So I want to switch gears, Eric. I want to talk to you about something that I find enormously troubling. I call it the 21st century pogrom at the Park East Synagogue in New York City. This is a congregation led by Dr. Schneier, who has a worldwide reputation for bringing diverse groups of people from all over the world, all the continents of the world, all the countries of the world, all the religions of the world together for common shared values of human decency and mutual respect. Mutual respect, not just mere tolerance, but encouraging diversity of thought and thinking, as long as you respect the other person's right to continue to live in peace and harmony, practice religion you want, practice no religion at all if that's what you want, but respect the other person's right to go forward. And Rabbi Schneier's temple, or synagogue, was the subject of this attack. And it was 200 people, and it was a lawless mob, and it was just awful because they were shouting words like, be afraid, we want you to be afraid, you should always be afraid. And who's that directed at? It's directed at people who are going to the synagogue because there's a tradition in Judaism about going back to Israel, whether as a visitor or as a permanent member of the Society of Israel. And this is a group that's been meeting there for years and years and years. And what they do is they tell people how you do this. And this was somehow objectionable. And so a pro-Palestinian, a pro-Hamas crowd violently threatened these people. And but for the critical response team, critical response group, an idea that was created, a group that was created by Commissioner Bill Bratton, and which Mondami, by the way, wants to eliminate. This is a group that has professional expertise in how to handle crowds, to avert violence, to deal with the right to freedom of protest and demonstration, but not the right to intimidate and violate the civil rights of others, which, by the way, under our federal civil rights law is a crime, it's a felony. So this group was able to finally get control of this mob. And that's a very interesting thing, because if you don't have control of the mob, then you're definitely going to have violence. And I anticipate there'll be violence in the days ahead as we enter the Mondami regime, unless he understands the role of this group. This group can work in one of two ways. One, it can be notified in advance that there's going to be a demonstration where there's a permit attached. Or two, it will respond to an emergency situation by sending out these carefully trained people who know about crowd control and avoiding violence. If you eliminate the critical response group, you then have to go to the precincts to man up and send people into the streets. The people from precincts are not nearly up to the job as a critical response group is. They're not trained for that. They don't know that. And when you take them out of their daily responsibilities at the precincts, doing whatever they do, whether it's patrolling the neighborhood, being in cars, responding to crime, doing investigations, whatever it is, you then deplete the resources to take care of the day-to-day criminal activities that have to be confronted. And so this is an awful thing. The question becomes, where is the outrage? And that's what upsetting me, Eric, more than anything. This was a front page story, and now it seems to have disappeared. Where is the outrage at this happening? Where is the leadership of Mondami in saying, this is not tolerable, this is not acceptable, we will not have this? In his statements, he started saying, well, people don't have a right to violate international law at these meetings at synagogues. First of all, he's not the judge and jury of what international law is. That's number one. Number two, there probably damn well isn't international law. Number three, there's no evidence at all that the people going to the synagogue were violating any laws at all. So they're just assembling peacefully, as they're right to do under the First Amendment. So this is pure nonsense. He's sending out a signal that he talks words, but the concern is that his actions as the chief executive of the city of New York is going to lead to more violence, more demonstrations, taking over the city streets, blocking passages over the bridges, over the tunnels, taking over college campuses, blocking Grand Central and the Port Authority and Penn Station modes of transportation. This is very dangerous stuff. Taking over our city streets, maybe closing off city streets like we saw in the 2020 riots when it happened in places like Portland and Seattle. So I'm concerned. I'm upset. The people he's surrounding himself with now, Eric, part of his transition team, some are notable people. A lot of them are radical leftist Islamists, radical socialists, who are anti-cop, anti-Israel, anti-Semitic, anti-law and order, anti-public safety, naive at best and evil at worst. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's worse than what you described. I think it's important that everybody remember how Zoran Mamdani identified himself during his victory speech. He didn't identify as an American. He didn't identify as a New Yorker. He identified as a, quote, young Muslim socialist, close quote. That's all he was. That's how he identifies. He is Muslim before he's young, because that's just his age, but he is a Muslim before he is anything else. That's how he identifies. And in the Muslim faith and in the Quran, Jews are classified as people of the book, and they're entitled to certain protections. But they must understand, as long as they understand, that they are second-class citizens and that there are restrictions on their behavior and what they can do and what they can think in order to survive in a Muslim world, Muslim-dominated world, where Zoran Mamdani now thinks he rules over in New York. So he makes this argument that I can be anti-Zionist, anti-Israel, but pro-Jewish. Of course you can't. In 21st century world, you cannot be if you are anti-Zionist, you are anti-Semitic. But he makes that distinction. So for him, Israel, what the Jewish state of Israel represents is that Jews are equals. That can't be. They have to be equal. They have to be second-class citizens. So for the state of Israel to be the most powerful country in the Middle East is just unacceptable to him. So he turns to the concept of the status of the dhimmi. So in the Quran, the status of the dhimmi for second-class citizens, that's both for Jews and Christians. So but he turns it on its head. And the only way to right the wrong of the Jewish state of Israel is to destroy the Jewish state of Israel and eliminate it. And the corollary to that is to eliminate those who support the Jewish state of Israel, because that just is turning the Quran on its head. Jews can't be equals, certainly can't be superior, they certainly can't be more powerful. And who supports the Jewish state of Israel? Jews. So the price of being part of what he calls our treasured Jewish community is that you must give up support for Israel. In other words, you must give up your soul. You can't be Jewish. Because being Jewish in the 21st century world means you identify in some way, shape, or form with the Jewish state of Israel. Who else is on his hit list? Christian Zionists. There's nothing more evil in the Mamdani world than being a Zionist. And of course, America. America is Israel's strongest and most important ally in the world, and therefore it must be undermined. So when he says he's a Muslim socialist, those are the three groups he's going after: Jews, Christian Zionists, and America. And unless you're willing to be second class or willing to participate in the destruction of the state of Israel, you are not entitled to protection. And that is why that explains his grotesque and outrageous response to what happened at the Park East Synagogue, which is really nothing short of a pogrom. What is a pogrom? A pogrom is a 19th and 20th century phenomenon for state-authorized violence against Jews. The state
was created by the Russian czars, by the way.
Right. Well, but then, of course, you had Kristallnacht, which was the beginning of the Holocaust, which was the greatest of all pogroms.
Exactly.
But the idea is that either the state itself sponsors it, it just watches it unfold and lets it happen. And my fear is that in the Mamdani regime, it's just going to let it unfold and let it happen, because his rhetoric, coming back to your point in the first segment, rhetoric can lead to violence. He's going to continue to accuse Israel of committing a genocide. He's going to continue to say Israel must be destroyed. He's going to continue to support Hamas. He's going to continue to support the concept of globalizing intifada and killing Jews. And while he may not do it, others will, and he will stand back and allow it to happen. So, and let's remember what was said. You hit on a few of them, but outside the Park East Synagogue, quote, "Death to the IDF," quote, "From New York to Gaza, globalize the intifada," quote, "Resistance, you make us proud, take another settler out," I mean, kill Jews, quote, "We do not want no Zionists here," and of course, quote, "It is our duty to make them, the Jews, think twice before holding these events. We need to make them scared." And to your point, Richard, what was the event? It was just a organization, nefesh to nefesh, soul to soul, that teaches people how to immigrate to Israel. Now, of course, if a Jew immigrates to Israel, that makes Israel stronger and more powerful. That's completely unpalatable. That has to stop. So when he was asked about a clarification about why he thought this violated international law, and of course, there's no mention in his statement about whether or not these people were gathering legally under American law or New York law. As you point out, all these people were doing was exercising their First Amendment right to free speech, freedom of religion, and freedom of association. But because the International Criminal Court dies and turned on its head the laws of international law, an organization to which neither the United States nor Israel is a signatory, and therefore has absolutely no jurisdiction either here or in Israel. And they issued an arrest warrant from Benjamin Netanyahu. Those laws, he seems, which have no basis in reality or law, those are the ones he wants to live by. But American law, irrelevant to him. And it's really quite shocking, the contempt in which he holds U.S. law and this idea in his mind of international law. Now, that's not inconsistent also with his idea that you learned from his victory speech, when he was holding out socialists as his great mentors, people who identify not as Americans, but as people of the world, citizens of the world, and not as Americans. So it's really important. You need to listen to the words these people use. They matter. They tell us stuff, and we ignore them at our own peril. And this is why I find it so disturbing that people are trying to work with him, to try and get him to, quote unquote, moderate or be on the inside, and we can manage him and, get what we want. Baloney. This is a perfect example. I love Jessica. I think she's doing a magnificent job. But she is making, in my opinion, a huge mistake by not resigning. And what happened at the Park East Synagogue is a perfect example. The police failed utterly, and she admitted that. But what she did not attack, apology to the synagogue, was his statement that it was a violation of international law. She just let that lie. She just left that out there. And all these groups that are trying to work with him, even rabbis who are well-intended, that are trying to work with him, all they do is give him cover. Let's look at the people. You alluded to this. Let's look at the people he's putting on his transition team or into his government. You have this guy, Alex Vitale, a Brooklyn College sociology professor. As he said, he wrote a book, The End of Policing. The problem is policing itself, he says. Police are the problem. Zhu Huang, diehard, on the police advocate. He thinks, again, that police, his quote is, we would argue that police unions as an institution, as well as the NYPD, because they're not as a separate people say, have outsized political power, defund the police. Jose Lopez, also a board member of Communities United for Police Reform. What does he say? He says, quote, contrary to his public relations campaign, Bloomberg was and continues to be a consistent supporter of extremist and discriminatory policing and social policies that increased structural racism in New York City. The city had never been safer than it was under Giuliani and Bloomberg. This guy wants to roll it back completely. And the list can go on, but I think I would be remiss if I didn't mention at least one more person. Tamika Mallory. Tamika Mallory is now part of his transition team and is going into his government. Let's remember who she is. She used to work at the Women's March. She was one of the original Women's March organizers. But she was forced to resign because she was a public supporter of Nation of Islam leader Louis Farrakhan and supported his comments and remarks about anti-Semitism and accused Jews of being responsible for the slave trade. This is who he is taking into his government. And this is why we really need to be concerned. And this is why, with all due respect to President Trump, who I think has been the most pro-Israel president in the history of the country, I was very troubled by the meeting in the Oval Office.
Well,
it normalized him.
Eric, let's take a break here because we're getting a hard out for this segment. I want to pick up on the Trump-Mondami meeting in our final segment. This is Let the Record Show with noted commentator, attorney, essayist Eric Levine. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Please stay with us. We'll be back in a few moments with our final segment of this week's show with more important and interesting conversation. Please stay with us.
Let the Record Show with Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
REI Co-op presents a perfect outdoor moment with the perfect gift. Picture this. You're ripping with your favorite person. Bluebird skies, blower powder, and frankly, you're skiing like legends.
So sick. Another lap?
Thanks to REI's curation, from lid to sticks, you nailed the gift.
No way. How'd you know?
Does it get more perfect than that? Give without guessing. Shop in store or visit REI.com.
This podcast is brought to you by Carvana. Carvana lets you buy your next car on your terms. Explore a massive inventory online, filter for what matters, and find your perfect match. Then choose delivery to your home or pick it up at one of Carvana's iconic car vending machines. Every car also comes with a 7-day money-back guarantee, so you can make sure it's the right fit. Buy your car on Carvana. Delivery or pickup fees may apply. Limitations and exclusions may apply. See our 7-day return policy at Carvana.com.
Carvana.
And now, a message from McAfee.
Your package couldn't be delivered.
You owe thousands in unpaid tolls.
You want a free gift.
If texts like these sound familiar, McAfee can help. McAfee automatically identifies text and email scams, as well as AI-generated audio, to help you stay safe. If they're faking it, they're not making it past us. Get award-winning scam detection today. McAfee.com/keepitreal.
This episode is brought to you by Marqeta. When it comes to your payments provider, you can't afford to compromise. Marqeta's modern payment solutions flex with your business without the trade-offs. Stable and agile, secure and innovative, scalable and configurable. If they say you can't have it all, don't believe them. Your business demands more. Choose a payments provider that delivers more. Choose Marqeta. Visit Marqeta.com/Spotify to learn more.
Get
Let the Record Show with Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
We're back on Let the Record Show with noted attorney, commentator, and essayist Eric Levine. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Our co-host, the distinguished Republican chair from Suffolk County and the vice chair of the state Republican Party, Jesse Garcia, is away this week. So when we took the break, Eric, we were talking about the Trump-Mondami White House meeting. Let me give you my thoughts, and then I turn it over to you. I found that statement after that meeting very troubling indeed. I consider it a lost opportunity on the part of President Trump to set the record straight, to let Mondami know what was expected of him, what he could do, what he couldn't do, the expectations of responsible governance to be the presiding chief executive officer of the nation's greatest city and one of the world's great cities. A place that's always been a melting pot, always given equal opportunity to everyone who came here, has been a place of unbridled freedom. And I think Trump missed the boat. He didn't call him out. They kept talking, he kept saying how wonderful he was, and he can find common ground, we can work together, he wants him to be successful. No, I do not want Mondami to be successful. Let me be really clear on that one. Mondami's success, if he abides by a Democrat socialist agenda, is anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, anti-American, anti-capitalist, anti-freedom, anti-equal opportunity. It is an ideological agenda. It's a marriage of the radical left and the demonic Islamist extremism who believe in hegemony over all peoples worldwide, and there's only one true religion, and it's their interpretation of the Muslim religion, and they do it at the point of a sword. No, I do not wish this man success, Mr. President. I wish him failure. I do not want him to be successful in destroying this great city and helping to destroy the United States of America. Affordability, well, I think we should be concerned about affordability, but you can't have affordability in a city that's dying, where the people of the productive class who pay the taxes, supply the revenues for all the social programs, provide the jobs, the services, who give to the charitable organizations, the cultural organizations, the hospitals, the educational institutions, the creative people, when they flee, and they will flee with their feet, that's how they'll vote, they'll flee with their feet. And we've already lost, in the last 10 years, the range of estimates is between 1 million and 2 million people in the state of New York, and about 400,000 in the city of New York. And who are you losing? You're losing the people who are the givers to the city, not the takers. We're being flooded by people who are coming here for a free ride, for free everything. They're promised free everything. And what are they going to contribute? They're just going to be on one dole after another. And he's going to try to impose laws and public policies that are anti-economic, anti-social, and contrary to law. There is no such thing as a rent freeze that will sustain the housing market. Whether you're building housing, or you're redeveloping housing, or you're maintaining housing. It doesn't work that way. The laws of supply and demand say the more housing you have, the more affordable it is. When you create an economic disincentive to build, to maintain, to rehab, then what are you doing? You're cutting back on the supply. There will not be affordability. You cannot turn over the buses and make them free, because the obligation is to have revenues to support the buses. That's on the bond deals. You can't do that. You can't tell the cops that the job is to stand idly by while rioting is going on and have no response for critical response team. You can't do that. You can't not recruit and enhance the police force so you have both a reality perception of law and order. You can't do that. So what success do I wish this guy? Very little indeed. So let me just say this, and I'll turn over to you, Eric. The lesson from Mondami is he should do a course in history and understand that wherever socialism or communism has been, it's failed because it's contrary to human nature, it's contrary to human experience. It will fail. And people will leave this city and it will be a dying mecca of failure. It's an awful thing to say, but that's what will happen if his agenda is achieved. And if you pit one ethnic group and one religious group against others, and he believes in Islamist extremism, there's only one true religion, and everybody else is second class and has to be converted at the threat of violence, that's not success. That's the destruction of the American dream and the freedoms of America. What say you, Eric?
Yeah, I agree with that all 100%. But when you're asking him to make a course correction, you're asking him to be somebody else. He can't be somebody else. He is who he is. You can't ask a bird to be a fish, and you can't ask a fish to be a cow. That's who they are. And that's who he is. And you're 100% right that socialism has failed every time, everywhere it's ever been tried. And what's interesting is there was this vote in the House about, condemning socialism. Every Republican voted for it. And then a significant number of Democrats voted for it, but an overwhelming majority of the Democrats condemned it, voted against it. They thought socialism, it was great. Now, it's interesting to note Hakeem Jeffries voted to say that socialism is bad. Well, who cares about his vote? Because he's going to do whatever Zohar Mamdani tells him to do, because, God forbid, the Democrats take back the House. First of all, Hakeem Jeffries can't win back his seat next year unless Mamdani agrees to support him against a DSA primary challenge. And then assuming Hakeem Jeffries wins his seat, he can't be elected to be speaker unless he gets the overwhelming support of the Progressive Caucus, which Mamdani and AOC will have a big hand in directing. And they're not going to agree to do anything for him unless he agrees to support his socialist agenda, plain and simple. But coming back to the Trump meeting for a moment, part of what I found troubling in terms of how Trump embraced Mamdani to the public is it kind of sanitized him. It made him, and he actually said, I found him very rational.
Yeah, he legitimized.
You can be. I'm sure he is very rational. You can be evil. Stalin was rational. He was evil. The Ayatollah is rational, but he's evil. I mean, the question is, what are your goals? What is it you're trying to achieve? And my concern is, but by treating him so favorably, treating him so nicely, and having such nice words for him, people think, okay, it's a normal guy. He's like any other politician. He's not. He's not like any normal politician, because he has a completely different view of how America should function, one that will fail and one that will undermine the American system. But the last check we have, our last chance in New York to stop Mamdani, is an Elise Stefanik as governor. That's our last chance. Because if Hochul is reelected, the entire state is going to go down the Democratic Socialist of America rabbit hole. The whole state's going to be lost. And then the death spiral will go into hyperdrive because everyone's going to leave. The entire tax base is going to leave. So by normalizing him, President Trump, I'm sure unintentionally, because I know he's a Elise Stefanik supporter, has made Stefanik's task that much more difficult, because the Stefanik strategy, which I agree with, is to strap Hochul on Mamdani, because she did endorse him, not endorsed her back, because she needs his support to fend off Delgado as a Democratic Socialist in a primary, and then she'll need Mamdani's support in a general election against Stefanik. So we're already seeing Hochul saying, okay, I'll give you your free buses. Okay, maybe I will raise taxes. Oh, you're certainly going to get all the money you need for universal child care. So she's already, after initially saying, I'm not going to do these things, slowly agreeing she's going to do all these things. So I was a little troubled by the president's approach to Mamdani, because I think it makes Stefanik's task that much more difficult. And Elise Stefanik is our last hope.
I agree. I mean, how do you legitimize a guy who's a rabid radical socialist, a rabid Islamist, a guy who believes that jihad is a worthy thing, that intifada is a worthy thing? How do you legitimize him? What was going on in Trump's mind? You know, Trump is guilty, most respectfully to the president. First of all, he doesn't have a great felicity of expression. You know, he has almost a limited vocabulary, and he doesn't articulate as well as he should. There's no reason to say this kid is swell. He's wonderful. I wish him success. We have so much in common. I would be surprised how much we had in common. What do you have in common other than the new litmus test, affordability? What was the big list of? I didn't hear him enunciate the 5, 6, or 7 things that they had in common that were common sense approaches to governance. I didn't hear that at all. I just heard he thought the kid was swell. And he indeed undercut Stefanik or Blakeman, whoever the Republican nominee will be. He undercuts the ability to get more seats in the state assembly and state senate that has resisted Democratic impulse to go radical left. And you have to elect Republicans to avoid overwhelming majorities so you can override a veto of the governor, assuming that if Hochul's reelected, she has either the intellectual capacity or the moral fiber to veto a lot of these dumb, counterproductive, dangerous ideas being pushed by the radical left. So even if she does it and she vetoes, and they don't have to worry about an override because they have the votes for an override, we're at a loss. So Trump was undercutting the Republicans in the legislative races in the state. And also, by the way, he's undercutting the message in the congressional races and the U.S. Senate races across the country as well, because the danger of this country, if you don't have Republicans controlling the House and the Senate, is that Trump will be a lame duck. He'll be ineffective. They'll probably start trying to drum up some more nonsense impeachment charges against him. He'll be a lame duck without the ability to deliver on his agenda. And that will mean the second part of his second term will be unsuccessful. He needs a Republican House. He needs a Republican Senate if he is not to be harassed and beaten down, and if he is to accomplish the agenda of restoring America to its greatness, a country of law and order and opportunity and economic development and national security. He needs that. And you can't say nice things about this guy because he's a fair weather boy. He's the face of the move of the Democratic Party in this country. The Democratic Party in this country is now hostage to the radical left. Eric, your thoughts?
You took the words right out of my mouth. Look, I've said it before, I'll say it again. There is no Democratic Party. It's a dead shell. And the Democratic Socialists of America have crawled into it. I mean, you just have to know that when Mamdani voted for himself in the mayoral election, he made a big deal that he voted for himself on the Workers' Family Party line, the socialist line, not on the Democratic Party. The DSA is ascendant. The traditional Democrats is the one, that we've grown up with over the years, which has moved further and further left, has now just disappeared into the ether. And Mamdani and AOC and the Squad and Bernie are the face of the party. And I think when you're dealing with people like Mamdani, I'm sorry, I got to be honest, I just think he's evil. I think he's an evil human being, because anyone who wants to destroy the Jewish state of Israel, anyone who supports the concept of globalizing the Intifada, which means kill Jews, anyone whose goal is to undermine the United States of America, is evil. And that's his agenda. And it has nothing to do with the fact that he's a Muslim. Whatever motivates him. But I am opposed to him and find him evil because of the policies that he adopts, because of the rhetoric that he espouses. That's why I oppose him. I oppose him on the merits. And you can't compromise with evil. You got to confront it and defeat it. And coming back to this, our earlier segment, we were talking about people that think they can work with Mamdani and try and moderate him, like Police Commissioner Tisch, again, who I love and adore, and I think he's doing a spectacular job. or some Jewish leaders who think that they can help moderate his positions. I do not doubt for a moment their motivations are nothing but pure. But I think that they should learn from history that when you try to accommodate evil, you are eaten and destroyed in the process, and you merely empower evil. The only approach to evil is to confront it and defeat it. We must consider ourselves counter-revolutionaries to Mamdani's revolution. And we must try to oppose him at every sector. We need to oppose his appointments. We need to oppose his policies, because if we don't, we will be consumed. And I know that sounds extreme to a bunch of people, but that's where I am. And I hope that many New Yorkers will work, but please, peacefully, at the ballot box, within the law. Never violate the law to oppose the guy. You don't save democracy by destroying it. You don't protect public safety by getting violent. Within the law, at the ballot box, with better and more speech, we need to defeat people like Zoran Mamdani. And that gets back to electing people like Elise Stefanik governor. Because unless there's a check on this guy, and Kathleen Hochul will be a willing participant because she's weak and worthless. Unless there's a check on Mamdani, his vision for New York and America is going to win. And we need to stop it.
Why do you think that people think that he's transactional? That's such a naive approach. He's only transactional to the extent that you go along with what he wants you to do. If you don't abide by what he wants and help him achieve his goals, his checklist given to him by Democratic Socialists of America and by the Islamists, both here in America and overseas, if you don't go along with what they want, then he's not transactional. The only transactional he'll do is what accomplishes his results. He's not going to be moderated because it's not within his culture, his value system, his own indoctrination.
Right. It's an issue of surrender. It comes back to a point I was making earlier, for example, about the Jews. We will love you, you treasured people of New York, as long as you separate and betray Israel. If you give up on Israel, if you betray Israel, if you help us destroy the Jewish state of Israel, you Jews are welcome here. Otherwise, you're our enemies.
Yeah, by the way, if you destroy the state of Israel, what happens to all the people who live there?
Oh, of course. Well, he doesn't care because they're Zionists and they aren't deserving of protection. But let's remember, without the state of Israel, the Jewish state of Israel, we are back to 1930s Germany. People must keep in mind that Israel doesn't exist because of the Holocaust. The Holocaust existed because there was no Jewish state of Israel. If Jews want to rewind back to that time, you're insane. But that's why the existence of a strong and proud Jewish state of Israel in the heart of the Middle East, a beacon of democracy, a strong American ally, an advocate for Western civilization, is critical, not just to Jews, but to America and Western civilization. And this guy wants to undermine all of that.
Well, that's exactly right. The fact of the matter is, but the one thing we learned after the hostilities started on October 7th and the successes of Israel is the first line of defense for Western civilization, the first line of defense for America, first line of defense for Europe against this wave of insane Islamist hegemonic characters who have no tolerance for any view other than their own and have shown time and time again that they believe they have an absolute right to put other people to death and to exterminate them when they don't go along with their agenda and their views. It's a frightening thing. And it's not because everybody has to love the Jews. Jews supply technology to America, supplies intelligence to America, is the first line of economic assistance where they can be helpful to them in terms of new products and new ideas and creativity. I mean, the ability of Israel to help America is a bilateral agreement. It's the same thing with America helping Israel. It works together because together they can spare us a total destruction of Western civilization. And as Bernard Lewis, the great British historian, always pointed out, this indeed is a war of civilizations, and we better wake up and understand that. And using pretty boys like Mondami with his wonderful smile and his surface charm is the way they get power in the United States, and how they've gotten power in cities all across Europe, and this is dangerous indeed. This has been Let the Record Show. Sharon Garcia will be joining us again next week. I've had the privilege and pleasure of being with my good friend, the learned attorney, commentator, and essayist, Eric Levine. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. We want to thank you for listening. We hope you have a wonderful week ahead, and we look forward to being with you again. As always, God bless you, God bless your families, and God bless America. Thank you for being with us again.
Thanks for listening to Let the Record Show. You can hear Let the Record Show Sunday mornings at 6. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder,
what the heck is going on here?
In every kitchen, there's a story, a favorite recipe passed down through generations, filled with love, laughter, and the taste of home. This holiday season, celebrate your family's traditions. Share the dishes that bring everyone together and keep those memories alive for the next generation. Visit app.heirloomfamilyrecipes.com today to start preserving your family's cherished food recipes and memories.
Your charitable giving stack just called, and it wants a glow-up. Donor-advised funds, or DAFs, are the fastest-growing giving vehicle for a reason. Ren technology is already used by the top institutions in the country for their DAFs. With Ren, you can oversee your charitable accounts, recommend grants, and deep dive on your giving history, all in one place. Ren just makes giving a lot less taxing. Learn more at RENINC.com.